September of 1876, a band of 8 men rode into Northfield, Minnesota, and proceeded to rob the First National Bank. From the first, everything seemed to go wrong. A teller escaped from the bank to warn the town, and in shooting him, the robbers only alarmed more of the townspeople. The men posted as guards outside the bank were attempting to clear the streets. But this was Minnesota, after all, and Nicholas Gustafson did not understand plain English, and he was shot for refusing to get out of the way. Since the robbers were from Missouri, they probably did not regard the killing of a squarehead as murder. But with every such incident, the robbers lost time and alarmed the citizenry. When the shooting was ended, 2 of the bank robbers, Clell Miller and William Stiles, otherwise known as Bill Chadwell, lay dead. In the manhunt that followed, the trackers killed Samuel Wells, alias Charlie Pitts, and captured 3 others, Cole, Bob, and Jim Younger. As these brothers were being transported to Stillwater State Prison, a reporter asked Cole Younger why he had come all this way just to rob a bank. "We are rough men," replied the veteran of Quantrill's raiders, "and used to violent ways." Near the end of his life, Cole explained that life had become too difficult for the Youngers back in Missouri, and they had decided to pull one last job to get a stake. They picked Northfield because they had heard that the bank held the assets of General Benjamin Butler, an infamous Reconstruction politician, also known as Spoons Butler, from his propensity to relieve Southerners of their silverware during the war. 2 gang members who got away, Frank and Jesse James, are said to have planned the Northfield raid as a means of carrying the war back into the North. Whatever the truth of this legend, it indicates the sentiment of many Missourians 11 years after the end of the war between the states. But that war, which for the rest of the country, or rather countries, which began in Charleston Harbor in 1861, had erupted on the Kansas-Missouri border as early as 1855. And if the war in general may be accurately described as the first modern war, because of the use of advanced weaponry, trench war tactics, and ideological propaganda, the war in Missouri was more like the feuding and raiding described in the Scottish border ballads and in ancient Greek epic. Historians have had a hard time coming to grips with the rough men who rode with Quantrill and Bill Anderson in defense of Southern liberties in Missouri. Typically, they are described as savage outlaws who took to banditry at the first opportunity. At the time, however, there were Missouri newspapermen like John Newman Edwards, who had ridden with Joe Shelby. And Edwards described the men who robbed the Kansas City Fair in 1872 as, quote, 3 bandits come to us from the storied Odenwald with the halo of medieval chivalry upon their garments. As much as I hate to admit it, there were no halos on Frank and Jesse James. But to understand their character and behavior during the long war against the Yankees, a war that only ended with Frank's acquittal in 1884, requires an historical imagination that is not fettered by Victorian prejudices of the 1870s or by the postmodern sentimentality of the 1990s. The proper historical and cultural context for the James and Youngers is not the Kansas-Missouri border in the 19th century America, so much as it is the Scottish-English border in the age of the ballads. Fight on, my merry men all," cries the outlaw Johnny Armstrong with his dying breath. The clansman's loyalty was to his people, rather than to someone so distant as a king, much less something so impersonal as a state.